So, hello everybody. Some of you know me, some of maybe not, but anyhow, my name is Paul Scorpin, and I'm sitting here in Andechs in southern Bavaria in my seminar room and healing center called the House of Lights. And it's a beautiful day in October, and about 2 weeks ago I returned from a 3-week stay on the island of Patmos. And I want to just give a short talk about why I offer seminars on Patmos, and what the seminar is about and what the island's about. So this was the longest stay that I've had on Patmos. It was 3 weeks because first came a German-speaking group, partly German, partly Austrian. And then after that, I had a short pause, and then I taught it in English to some Danish people and a Norwegian woman. And I've been doing this now for the last I've been offering these courses for the last 3 years. And I can only share with you that it seems that every time we do that course there, it's just increasing in intensity. Now, a little bit about the island. Patmos is a small island, 34 square kilometers big, and it's situated just off the coast of Turkey, about 80 kilometers away from Ephesus, as the bird flies. And it's a series of islands. Patmos is known to us largely because of the Book of Revelations, which is what I'm going to talk about shortly. But it is also an island which has been inhabited for at least 4,000, if not 5,000 years. We don't know much about the early residents from Patmos, but we do know about that the Greeks were there. And the Greeks were there even until the Romans came. And the Greeks built in Patmos, in what's known now as Hora, where the temple, where the John Monastery is. They built apparently they built it, they did, it's clear, a temple to the goddess Artemis, the favorite daughter of Ephesus. And the Artemis temple stood there probably until 1088, when a priest came and basically they tore it down and took the blocks of it to build what's now is a famous monastery of St. John. And down in Scala, which is where the boats arrive from Kos and Samos and Rhodos and Athens, which is the biggest city in Patmos, which is not saying much, there was an Apollo temple and what's called this place where they race horses. And when John was there might have been as many as 30,000 people there, belonging to the Roman army and families, of course. Even in Grikos, which is a small tourist village outside of, there was a Aphrodite temple or Venus temple. They're not sure. So that the Patmos has been attracting spiritual energy for a long time, and we know that when one religion replaces another, they often take their holy places because they're power places, and then transform them into a new building, a new place of worship. Happens all the time. So the island is gorgeous. They call it a paradise. It's also called the Jerusalem of the Aegean Sea, having to do with the heavenly city, which is presented in the Book of Revelations. And it is it is just one of the most picturesque islands you can imagine, and it is a paradise. The people who are born there and live there, were raised there, they never tire of its beauty. Okay? How many people live in Patmos? That's the question. So in the summertime, they say there's about 3,000 residents. And then in the wintertime now, the wintertime starts at the end of September, all the way until late May, there's 700 people that live on the island. The island makes all of its money through tourism and through pilgrims. It's open. It opens its doors, let's say, at the end of May, and then closes its doors at the end of September. A very short window of about 4 months, where they have to make all their money in order to survive and feed their families. The island is also very much alive. When I say that, I mean every time you go there and you spend more time there, you start to sense the soul of the island. And the island has a very feminine soul, very soft soul. It's a very nurturing soul, which breathes out peace and trust, and, like I said, a very, very nurturing energy. And so the island is very much alive. And there's a saying in Patmos, and I've experienced this firsthand, that either you are, when you first arrive on Patmos and you do that, you have to take some effort to get there, because you can't fly there, thank God. So you have to fly to Samos or to Kos or to Athens or to Rhodos and then take a ferry. But when you get there, either you start falling in love with the island, or you start being repulsed by it. Sounds strange, but I've had a lot of experience in the last 3 years. And I'm one of those people who fall in love with the island. The hotel where I teach these courses is called Knowing Muses, and it's an oasis for us. And the receptionist there this year was Georgia, and she belongs to Patmos. She's born there and raised there. Her family has lived there for a long time. And she says Patmos is like a beautiful woman that takes you in her arms and holds you and will not release you. And you don't want to be released, not because of her beauty, but because of her energy and her beauty. So, why do I offer courses in Patmos? A lot of you might know that I had the good fortune a couple of decades ago of working with one of the greatest Christian mystics and healers of our time. His name was Daskalos, or he was known as Daskalos. His name was Stylianos Atechelis. And Stylianos Atechelis, or Daskalos, I got to spend the last 6 years of his life with him as his closest student and confidant. And I traveled with him and wrote books with him and recorded his talks, and we became very close. And he has a very close relationship with John the Apostle, very. In fact, it was John the Apostle who gave the talks that Daskalos gave. And I have my own relationship with John the Apostle since Daskalos passed and gave his body back to the earth. And I can ask John for inspiration. And I've been very much at home in the Gospel of John since I settled here in Germany, and I give courses on the Gospel of John with my wife. And I also developed a healing treatment based on the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is very unique compared to Matthew, Luke, and Mark, because Matthew, Luke, and Mark are called the synoptic Gospels. That means they're seen from one eye. And John stands alone because John has a whole different gospel. Not entirely different, but largely different. And in the Gospel of John, for example, if you know it, Jesus performs 7 miracles. He turns water into wine. He heals the child of the nobleman. He heals the paralyzed man. He turns bread and fish into enough food to feed over 10,000. He walks on water. He heals the blind man. and he brings Lazarus back from the dead. And you also know that maybe that in the Gospel of John, he presents 7 I am statements. I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world, and so forth. And these they fit really well to the chakras. So I developed a treatment about 10 years ago, or John gave it to me. It doesn't make a difference. Which I call the alchemy treatment, where we pray, where a healer prays the seven miracles into the 7 chakras along with the 7 I ams. And also in the Gospel of John, Jesus heals always on the 6th hour or the 6th day, symbolizing a movement into the Sabbath. Okay, just before the Sabbath. Sometimes he heals on the Sabbath, which symbolizes completion, and it means that somebody's ready to go into a new state of consciousness, which is often the heart chakra, because of an illness like blindness and I know that about the Gospel of John. And then Daskalos told me, and this is controversial because a lot of people don't believe this, that it was John who wrote the book of Revelations. Why do we believe that? Well, we know that John was young when Christ went the way of the cross. John was maybe 16 years old. And after Christ was crucified, the Christians were being persecuted. And John was told by Christ on the cross that the Virgin Mary is now his mother, and the Virgin Mary was told that John is now her son. And so the story goes that John took the Virgin Mary and the Maria Magdalena into safety, and he took them to Ephesus, which was part of Asia Minor, part of the Roman Empire. And Ephesus was a booming city of maybe 250,000 people at the time, which all celebrated a goddess. And then it says so in the book of Revelations. And then Maria Magdalena might have stayed there for a while, and then she might have gone to the Provence. I don't know. The Virgin Mary stayed there, and they found her house, and you can visit her house, which I've done a number of times, not far from Ephesus. And the story goes is that John started to proselytize Christianity. He tried to convert, they say, the followers of Artemis into the Christian belief, monotheistic belief. And as a punishment, he got banished by the emperor to the island of Patmos. And a lot of us have this picture that this punishment was on a barren island, which was empty, and it clearly wasn't empty. There was many, many more people there than there are now. And that John stayed there maybe 3 years and started to baptize people there. There's 2 places where they celebrate that he baptized people. And I have reservations about that, because knowing the book of John as I do, I know that Jesus says often in the Gospel of John that it's not my hour. My hour is not yet come. He says that in the marriage at Cana, when his mother asked him to do something because they had no more wine. He says, "Woman, my hour is not yet come." So the Jesus that's presented in the Gospel of John knows that there needs to be a time when we're ready, to be transformed. And you can't force that, and you can't just do it by baptism, and you can't do it by preaching. You normally reach a state of humility where you're ready to be transformed into love, which is your nature, through suffering. You know? Not only, but through suffering, or through hunger and thirst. So it makes no sense to me that John would be trying to convince the people of Ephesus that they should believe in Jesus Christ or in the one God and move away from paganism or polytheism. But anyhow, that's the way the story goes. So what I personally believe is that John had to go to Patmos to receive the book of Revelation. So he went there and lived there among the Roman community there, and probably visited the temple of Artemis and the temple of Apollo and the temple of Aphrodite, and probably felt pretty much at home there. because I think that John has no problem with the Holy Feminine. And so he probably felt pretty good with a religion that celebrated Artemis as the main goddess. And he probably felt good in Ephesus. And I think one of the reasons why Mary stayed there, the mother of Christ, was because she felt good also among a community which celebrated the divine feminine. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the book of Revelations. Because many people don't believe John wrote it. They say it can't be because the Greek is different, and also time-wise it doesn't make any sense. Time-wise it makes perfect sense because Jesus died at the age of 33 or died and was resurrected. And that's the 33rd year of our calendar. And so if we just go ahead in time to say 70 when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans, or the 80s, then John would have been approximately 75 years old. And a mystic himself, being so well trained by Jesus. And he was very much attuned to the Christ energy because he followed it the last 3 years of Jesus' life before the crucifixion. And he was also very much in tune with the Christ consciousness. So he's the perfect riverbed to receive the book of Revelations. Perfect riverbed. And so the Christ came to him in a cave or somewhere on Patmos. There's a cave in its honor. And his handy scribe, Prochorus, was there. And as Johannes received these visions from the Christ and these messages from the Christ, he then spoke them out and Prochorus wrote them down. And who's to know why the Greek is so different? They say the Greek in the book of John is beautiful. And although it was probably written in Aramaic, I'm not sure John even spoke Greek. Philippos did, doesn't matter. And they say that the Greek in the book of Revelations is not so beautiful. But Prochorus wrote it down, and maybe he wrote it down in a hurry, and maybe he wasn't fluent in Greek. It doesn't matter. There is a constant. There is something that runs from the last gospel in the 4 Gospels, and then the last book of the whole Bible, which is the book of Revelations, the book of the Apocalypse. And it is this. And I'd like to show this on the board, if I may. So, in Eastern and Western mysticism, we talk about 7 main chakras. So, I didn't miss my calling. I'm not an artist, but I'm good at drawing stick figures. So we have 7 main chakras and then also the other chakras. But the 7 main chakras are the root chakra, the sacral chakra, solar plexus, heart chakra, throat chakra, third eye chakra, and the crown chakra. Now, this is why the Gospel of John works so well, and the Gospel of John now works so well in healing, because you can actually put the 7 miracles into each one of these chakras along with the 7 I Ams. The book of Revelations is constructed out of 7, and it's constructed out of 7 times 7. Okay. I'll talk about them in a second. The 7 letters that are written on the 7 communities in Turkey. And that means in the book of Revelations we are presented with 49 levels. Daskalos, as a mystic, was very, very much awake. And one day he said, to us all, he said, every human being is constructed out of 7 universes. Well, because each one of these chakras has a connection with a plane. And he said, it's not only that we have these 7 levels, but each one of these 7 levels is divided then into 7 levels. So here we have 7, here we have 7, here we have 7, here we have 7. You get my point. And so what we end up with is that every human being is constructed out of 49 levels. And that has to do with the emotions that we have. It has a lot to do with the thoughts that we have. A lot to do with the beliefs that we have in our past. Past constructed out of family karma, personal karma, and collective karma. Now, if we look at the Book of Revelations and we say, okay, is it a coincidence that it speaks to us, or it presents us with 49 acts, and we are constructed of 49 levels? Is that a coincidence? And it's not. It can't be. It cannot be. It's a great mystery, arcana. It's an amazing mystery. And let me backtrack a little. It's been an extraordinary year for me. About a week before I traveled in September to go to Patmos, an old friend came and said, "Paul, I'd like to meet with you. We haven't seen each other in 8 years, and we had a bad falling out. And he just asked if he could come here to have a talk with me." And I didn't want to, because of time limitations and also because of the falling out. And he convinced me that it would be good. And he came here, and we had an extraordinary talk. And he said, "Paul, I think I know why we had the falling out." And I hope that doesn't disturb you. He said, "I see things differently than you do." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, there are people in life or in spirituality who require a lot of order. They need a lot of structure. And I'm one of them." And he said to me, "Paul, I can see that you're versed in philosophy, and I've got a degree in philosophy. You're versed in sociology. I got a degree in sociology. That's why I knew Markides. And you're very versed in the Bible, and you're versed in other things. And that gives you a lot of security, and you need that as a teacher, and probably personally you need that." And I said, "Yeah, that's true." And he said, since he was born, he's my age, he's had to guard himself against order, wisdom. He said, "I'm much more at home in chaos," he said to me. "I'm afraid, or I've been afraid, maybe for karmic reasons, that if I make a home in order, then everything's defined. And in spirituality, spirituality defines everything on earth and in heaven, right? We define the archangelic orders." And he said, "My fear is that if I have too much order and too much structure and too much definition, then I'll have no place for a surprise or what's new." And I said, "I think I understand." And then about a week later, I flew off to Patmos to start this work with the German-speaking group, and then the English-speaking group. And as I just told you, the Book of Revelations has an order. 7 times 7 is an order. So you can trust that, because you can trust the order. And you can also see it as being extremely spiritual, the perfect cookbook for us, because it addresses every aspect of us. But the Book of Revelations is at its core extremely chaotic. It confuses people. Most people fear the Book of Revelations to no end, because they believe it's a description of the end time. Our Vice President in the United States, Pence, is a great believer in the Book of Revelations as a full description of the end days. That's why he can't wait to be president, because then he can speed up the process of the end days, believing that Christ will come again, and the Jews believe the Messiah will come again, or will come. And again, going back to the the Gospel of John, where I know that speaks to us inside. It doesn't, it describes things outside, but it actually speaks to us inside. It speaks to the chakras. It speaks to an inner landscape. It talks about an outer landscape where Jesus goes from the Galilee up to Jerusalem and back down to Galilee. Beautiful. And that's the outer landscape. I'll be taking a group there again in May. It was my spiritual home. I've been there over 60 times in what's called Israel or Palestine or Cana. And I love it there. But the Gospel of John is written for us inside. And the book of Revelations, in this connection with this perfection, so much perfection that it says in the end of the book of Revelations, if you take one word out of here, or add one word to this text, things will not go well for you. That's saying it nicely. It means that it's perfectly delivered and perfectly written. Even if it's bad Greek, it's perfectly. So the text is perfect. And I know that now, because now I have so much respect for the book of Revelations, and it's only growing. Because I see what it does to people, and I see what it does to me. And I trust it, and I surrender myself to it. So what happens then to the 7 chakras when you come to Patmos and take this course with me, and with John, and with Thomas, because the skull of Thomas is there, and with Artemis, and with Apollo, and with Aphrodite, is the Christ energy writes 7 letters. This is how it opens. And the 7 letters are written to the 7 communities, what's today in Turkey. Ephesus is one of them, Smyrna, Philadelphia, Sardis, you know them all. And you can visit these towns today. And the letters are written from Christ and delivered to John and then written down by Proclus. And then the 7 archangels deliver these letters as the post people on the 7 communities. And because this is inside of us, then my root chakra becomes Ephesus. And all my chakras are transformed into these 7 churches or 7 communities. And the letters start really nice. They start with a lot of praise. They say, you're doing really super, you're doing a great job, Ephesus, you know. And then comes the but. And then comes the critique. And for example, at Ephesus, it says in the letter to Ephesus, Ephesus, you've lost your first love. And why does the Christ energy say to the root chakra, you lost your first love? Well, the moment we fall out of the Garden of Eden, we fall into the root chakra. And our love for God in the Garden of Eden, we start forgetting it. And so this letter to Ephesus and then to all of the 7 communities, the 7 chakras in me, they're wake-up calls. It says, wake up. Something beautiful is about to happen. And so they start reorganizing themselves. The chakras reorganize themselves. And then what we do in the seminars, I read this to them, and then I explain to them it's better to trust than to understand the book of Revelations. And then either we stay in the hotel in the seminar room, or we go to someplace on the island, and then I lead them through a deep meditation where I read these letters to them. And that's getting powerful. It's getting even more powerful. It's getting incredibly powerful. Because I'm a riverbed for these letters, and then all this energy is coming through me, and it's flowing through me and from everywhere into them and into their chakras. And then we have a siesta, and then we make it back to the hotel, and then they break up into teams of 2. And I have these treatment forms planned in English and now in Danish. And they go off into their beautiful apartments. The hotel's a paradise itself. Everybody gets an apartment with a bed and a living room and a kitchenette, and then a beautiful terrace that overlooks the Sea of Galilee. That's heaven. And then your partner will then read these letters by laying their hands on the 7 chakras, and boom, and that's the first day. And that's perfect. Well, then comes the second day. What happens on the second day? Well, man, you read that there's a book that was sealed at the beginning of time with 7 seals of wax. Boom, 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 boom. And there's a big discussion. Who's worthy to open up these seals? Because under these seals, we don't know what's there. Only God knows what's there. And then comes the Lamb of God, Christ energy, and says, I'm worthy. And then the Christ energy starts opening these seals. And these seals open what's called the original powers in the chakras. Since the moment we incarnated, the universal energy in us has been sealed, closed. That we can have a very personal process here on earth. And if these primordial energies in the chakras are always active, then we can't have something personal. And the whole reason why we're here is to have something personal until this day that the Christ energy says, okay, you're going to have a cleaning from outside in. I'm coming to that, or John comes to that. But in order to do that, we're going to release the primordial energy in the 7 chakras, that the cleaning will start happening from inside out. And so 4 horses start to be released. A horse is released from the root chakra, a horse is released from the sacral chakra, a horse is released from the solar plexus and from the heart chakra. They have colors: red, white, black, pale. And it continues. And then suddenly you have this cleaning coming deep from within the powers inside of you, thanks to the Christ energy, which has opened the seal. And then, again, we do a meditation, and then we do a treatment on that day. And then the third day, something extraordinary happens. And then we read about it that there are 7 trumpets. And the 7 trumpets are given to 7 archangels who are going to blow them into a landscape, into seas, into waters, into mountains, into everything in us. So the 7 archangels start blowing these 7 trumpets into us. And then it's a major, major cleaning of karma. So much so that it says there on the 3rd day, I get emotional when I talk about this because I see how beautiful it is and how true it is. What I'm saying, I believe to be true. But what Trump says, he believes this to be true too. 1/3 of us will pass away that day. It's described as the stars in the heaven fall into the sea, the mountains fall into the sea. 33% of us. The fish and the animals in the sea die, 33% of us. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. And at the end of only the meditation, you feel like 33% of you has just gone away. Of emotions, of thoughts, of belief systems and so forth. Of suffering, of passion. That only a 66% of you survives that. Okay? And then on the 4th day, because our egoism, our personal egoism, doesn't want to perish. Douglas said that. C.G. Jung said that. Your shadows want to stay shadows, and they depend on you that they can survive, because every elemental, as Douglas says, wants to survive and is intelligent and knows how to survive. And so there starts to become a counter-resistance. Your egoism described as the devil, as Satan, as the old snake, as a whore. It has many names in the book of Revelations. I'm not saying there's not a counterforce in the universe or in the world now. We're experiencing that now in Washington and other places, in Italy now. Even here in Bavaria, the far right just won seats in the parliament. There's a lot of counter forces around us, but what we have to concern ourselves with, first of all, is the counter energy in us, which we describe as egoism. And our personal egoism wants to stay in us. It wants to stay in the chakras. So what happens then on the 4th day is a woman appears. and she's pregnant, and she's having birth pains. And then a child is born, and this child is a boy, and it runs to God. The moment this child is born, there's a sign in heaven, and then there's a dragon there. And the dragon is really angry. The dragon's a force of your personal egoism. And the dragon says, this can't continue. Yesterday I lost 30% of my people. This can't continue. I'm going to attack the woman, and I'm going to attack the child. And in that moment, another sign happens in heaven, and that's the Archangel Michael is now called to duty. And Michael's there with his angels, and the dragon has his angels, the dark angels, and they start fighting, and Michael, as always, wins, and he throws the dragon down to the earth. And then the dragon sees the woman, and God gives the woman two wings, and she goes into the desert, where she'll stay 2,200 something days. And then the dragon goes after her and wants to spit fire at her. And then the earth, the lovely earth, opens up a cavern and swallows the fire, and the woman goes into safety. And so what happens on the fourth day is there's a major fight between your ego, your real self, and your false self. And you get help from Michael and the primordial energies which are released. And at the end of the day, you survive, and it continues. And only because you survive and it continues, and you're stable now, then the fifth day comes. And then on the fifth day, what happens is we read this, there are 7 bowls. And these 7 bowls are filled with poison, and they're going to be poured on the landscape. And there's going to be grasshoppers, and there's going to be plagues, and there's going to be this, and there's going to be that. But what happens is the archangels pour these 7 bowls of poison into the 7 chakras as mercy. And then a major cleaning takes place. It doesn't say how much, but it could be the rest of the 66%. Or let's say 80% of your karma is gone after that day. It sounds crazy, but this is what the Book of Revelation offers us. And Patmos supports this. Then you survive that, and then the 6th day, we experience Babylon, the great city which wants to reach to the heavens. And we experience also a beast that comes out of the sea, another part of your egoism, an older part of your egoism, now activated. And there's a beast that comes out of the earth. And then Babylon falls. Babylon falls, your egoism falls, it collapses, and that day opens the door. Then you go through seven events on that day, where what's left of your egoism is then washed away, and you are slowly transformed into the new earth, which the Book of Revelations talks about. And then on the 7th day, the last day, paradise is restored. Not only restored, paradise is experienced because there's a wedding between the Lamb of God and the woman, a beautiful wedding. And there's another wedding because the transformed earth, that's us, is then comes together with the heavenly Jerusalem, which falls from heaven. And it is only possible because of what you just went through the last 6 days. And you are then transformed. The heavenly Jerusalem, which comes down to earth, is a city described in the Book of Revelations, gorgeous, made up of stones and pearls and emeralds, and the streets are made out of everything, and it's 1,500 miles wide, 1,500 miles deep, and 1,500 miles high, which is about half the United States. It says that. That's just so. Now I hope you have an idea of what we do on Patmos, because at the end of this September trip, I said I cannot teach this twice in a row. I can't do it. I can't take it. Just as a riverbed for the Book of Revelations, as a teacher, I can't do it twice in a row. And then because the German groups are normally filled, and I have one plan for Pentecost next year, and I have one plan again for September, I said, it looks like I won't be teaching this in English anymore. Because I had too few people for this time, but because I was there already, I did it anyway, and I'm glad I did. And lo and behold, I get back here, and I said, I have to try again. Because there are a number of people out there, you know who you are, who wanted to take part this year, but couldn't because of time constraints or because of financial restraints. And so I'll try once again, and I'll leave this on my website. It's on my website. This date. I'll be on the island for Pentecost, teaching it in German, and then I'm taking a week off somewhere, either on Patmos or Leros or another island, just to restore myself, and then I'll be back on Patmos to be teaching the Book of Revelation, diving into the depth of the Book of Revelations on Patmos. If there's enough of you who want to take part, from the 22nd of June to the 28th of June, 2019. Like I said, I'm going to leave this on my website until maybe Easter time, and enough of you respond, then it'll stay there, and we'll see if enough of you want to go through this in English. Even the Danish people said, you know, Paul, the Danish and the Norwegian people said at the end, they said, are you going to offer this again in English? And I said, I doubt it, because look, you're too few. And they said, it doesn't matter to us. We're going to come again next year, and we'll take it in German, even though we don't understand German. And even now with the German group, this September there were, I think, 12, and 7 of them were repeaters. One of them has now taken it 6 times, the course on Patmos, and she lives there. She decided to stay there. She went into early retirement to stay there. And already for the German September group, I think 5 or 6 or 7 are going to come back again, because they realize that it was totally different this year than it was last year, because it's just increasing in intensity. Partly because I trusted so much, and I want to present it, and I want to deliver it in the meditations and so forth, and partly because it fits the time that we're in, the paradigm shift that we're going through. The paradigm shift that we're in the middle of is basically telling us that about 90% of what we believe in, and even our lifestyle, doesn't really apply anymore, because all of our structures are in danger. And again, I'll remind you, if all of our structures are in danger, and all of our structures are stored within the 49 levels in the 7 chakras, 7 times 7. And then they're presented with a divinely inspired text, which is built up out of 7 times 7. And we transform that into a healing seminar, because that's my dharma, is when I get a divine text like the book of the Lord's Prayer or the Beatitudes, I immediately have the impulse, how can we bring that as healers into the body? I've been doing that for 20 years. And I was very careful with the Book of Revelations, because I know a lot of people fear it. And now I'm seeing, because I'm fortunate enough to go to Patmos with groups, I'm seeing how beautiful it is and how powerful it is. It is unbelievably beautiful. And if you can let go of your fear, and if you can let go of your resistance, and you can just surrender yourself to the Book of Revelations, especially in a healing course, you're going to experience a huge mystery, that is going to actually free you from as much as you're ready to let go. Okay, so I'm going to put this talk online, and like I said, if this doesn't work out, then maybe I'll give up the idea of teaching this in English. It will be sad, because it's my mother language still, but I'm trying again, and this is the 3rd year that I'm trying. The first year didn't take place, and this September it took place, but I'll try again. Okay, all the best to you folks, and I hope you're having a beautiful autumn like we're having. It's gorgeous here. And I hope you're all well, and take care, and God bless.